Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, February 24th, 2022, and today we're going to be talking about the United States generic ballot, the 2022 House elections, and how if the Republican Party is to win control of the House, which I entirely expect them to do so, how their majority will actually be slim and not near what it was after the 2010 midterm elections, or really any election leading up to the 2018 midterm elections. Now, I say this in confidence because of a bunch of different factors, and I could entirely be wrong by the time November comes around. I would caution you by saying that you probably shouldn't be, taking what an analysis of February 2022 is, meaning for an actual result in November of 2022. But I do think that I am on track, at least for what we have seen so far. I have never doubted that the Republican Party was going to win control of the House in 2022, and I did think that they were going to do so for about a year now. Even though Joe Biden was soaring high in popularity, I knew at some point that it was going to dip into the disapprove as it is right now, and that the redistricting control ultimately would give Republicans the upper hand. And while the Republicans really did fall practically flat on their face when it came down to the process of redistricting, I also do want to say that the national environment is not conducive to a Democratic Party victory. It is just not the right environment for them to win, and I think that at this point in time, that needs to be recognized and continues to need to be recognized as we go through the next months. But I would also like to point out, and I said this in the very beginning, and you can tell this from the title, that the Republican Party will not be doing as well as they previously thought. If you take a look at the change between 2008 and 2010, 2008 being the last time Democrats had a trifecta prior to the 2020 election, the Democratic Party in 2008 was able to win over 250 House seats. The Democrats had a lot of room to fall. And in 2010, what you saw was the surge of the Tea Party. The Republican Party resurged to national support, and they channeled that anti-Obama energy into pro-Republican votes. Looking at the generic ballot today, we simply don't see that happening. Joe Biden is disapproved of by about 10 points more of the nation than he is approved of course, and that is a very, very broad range. You are talking about a nationwide vote that voted for Joe Biden by 5 points in the election and approved of him by 7 leading up to the election. The Republican Party only maintains about a 2.6% lead amongst that same exact group, the national average, which means there's about a 7.5% total fallout in terms of those who disapprove of Biden and those who are willing to vote for the Republican Party. And I think that it is going to be, a pretty unfortunate reality for the GOP that they simply will not be receiving the majority that they probably expected to have, looking at their previous midterm elections in which a Democratic president was there, Obama in 2010 and Obama in 2014. The Republicans with this 2.6% lead isn't likely to lead them to a 2010 type of victory. And just to give you an idea and a visualization of what the 2008 to 2010 type victory looked like, you can see it very clearly here. This is the 2008 map in which the Democratic Party, again, won numerous House seats. I mean, they literally picked up a seat all across the country. You saw one in Idaho. That was one of the narrowest elections, but was still a victory for the Democratic Party. You also saw one across many other states. Arizona had Democrats in the majority there. You saw, Nevada have a split delegation turn into Democrats being in the advantage. It was, district after district, and the Democrats were able to solidify what they already won in 2006. Then came 2010. This is what happened. You can see the very clear change. Blue, red. Blue, red. I mean, it was a monumental change. The entire nation really shifted away from the Democratic Party in such a high level, and that was because the Republican Party was able to do things effectively. They simply do not seem to be doing so right now. Now, the 2010 map was not done after redistricting. The 2012 election was done after redistricting. This was 2010. This was 2012. Sorry, this is 2020. This was 2012. The Democrats gained 8 seats, but the states themselves had been gerrymandered so much that Democrats won the national popular vote when it came down to the House of Representatives, but only won 201 districts. This was one of the most clear cases of the process of gerrymandering and its full effects, that Democrats could actually win nationwide the same way that they did in 2016 in the Electoral College, but still end up losing the House majority. Democrats would not recover from this gerrymandered map until 2018 when they were able to win, and Republicans were supposed to reverse all of the gains that the Democratic Party had made. They were supposed to gerrymander the map the same way that Republicans did in 2010 and provide them with a map similar to 2012. But honestly, that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. Looking at the process of redistricting, the Republican Party has put themselves in a position where they are now expected to lose a total number of 5 seats, and 7 highly competitive seats have been cut out of the range. What this means is now Democrats are gaining 12 Democratic-leaning seats, even if they already held them, and they do hold, I think, nearly every single one of these now Democratic-leaning seats, even though they may hold them right now. putting them more solidly into the Democratic column means that in a wave year, Democrats will still survive it. For instance, in the state of Texas, what the Republican Party did was shore up all of their incumbents, which arguably is going to be bad for Democrats in a year that is a blue wave. But in terms of playing defense, in terms of, solidifying your bases, the Republican Party gave Democrats every single one of their toss-up seats into the safe margin with the exception of one. Every single one of the seats that the Democratic Party held, they gave back to them. What you are finding here is that Democrats actually will be gaining Democratic-leaning seats, whereas the Republican Party, while gaining 2, of course, with the shoring up of a bunch of their seats here, you're looking at a decrease of 5 highly competitive seats, which will benefit the Republicans later down the line, but for right now actually benefits the Democratic Party and could very well prevent the GOP from having any type of substantial majority in the House of Representatives. It's very easy to convert, 4 to 5 members of the House to vote with the Democrats occasionally if they're more liberal-leaning members of the GOP, and if they could truly throttle the House of Representatives the same way we are seeing it happen for Democrats in both the House and the United States Senate. But I use Texas as an example because it was a very big opportunity for the GOP to try to draw out Democrats and try to gerrymander the state. But they confirmed their map a little too early on for them to have any type of pushback on what they were seeing nationwide, and they're pretty much stuck with those maps for the next 10 years. And that happened all across the nation. The Democratic Party came out with the upper hand despite being down over 100 seats when it came into this process altogether. The process of redistricting occurs every 10 years, and state legislatures are given that opportunity to do it. And the Republican Party had control of over 200 seats, whereas the Democrats had control over just about 80 seats, which meant the GOP had such a significant advantage, and yet Democrats seemed to come out ahead. And you can see this happen all across a bunch of different states. And also, the courts were just simply not on the side of the Republican Party in this process altogether, which meant that now, looking at our brand new congressional maps, the Democratic Party, again, does benefit from this. So, looking at the generic ballot, while I do still expect the GOP to win control of the House, we are not talking about anywhere near a 2008 to 2010 type shift. We are not talking about anything near a 2014 margin. Let's go ahead and see if we can show you the 2014 House elections. I don't know why I'm using Wikipedia. We can use this right here. 2012 to 2014 solidified many of these states, but guess what? Now, even though the GOP in 2014 was able to win the House popular vote, the Democratic Party will fare better than this. They will fare significantly better. They gerrymandered Illinois to a point where at most there will be 3 to 4 Republican representatives. In 2014, there were 8 in Illinois. In the state of New York, the Republican Party had 9. In a realistic case, they might have 5 or 6 in 2022, even with a margin like this on the nationwide level. In North Carolina, the Democrats only had 3, Republicans had 10. In this new map, even with an additional district added, at most you're talking about 9 seats in the state of North Carolina. Looking at the state of Colorado, it actually ends up potentially with a GOP advantage, but again, best case scenario, 4 to 4, a split delegation. Arizona, Republicans will probably have that upper hand, probably do better, maybe 6 to 3, but that is for 2022. Looking at states such as, Texas and Florida, a lot of the status quo here from 2014 will remain the same, except this time Democrats have expanded in Illinois. They've expanded in New York, right? They've expanded in a bunch of other states. They've turned Oregon into a state with an additional Democratic district. You are looking at California, which will not have 14 representatives. I mean, every single Democrat in California right now who is currently serving following the 2020 election has been put in a district that is Biden double digits, which means that even in a red wave where Republicans are shifting the nation, very few seats will flip, if any. The Republican Party is actually probably going to lose seats later down the line, considering the trends in California and the suburban shift away from the Republican Party. And I think at this point, what you're looking at, the main differences between the last Republican wave and a midterm election is that Democrats now are positioned to do so much better based off of their brand new maps. New Jersey probably will not have a split delegation. I mean, that just doesn't seem like a likely outcome. Republicans will not have the majority in the state of Virginia. It's probably going to be about even in Pennsylvania instead of 13 to 5. What you're looking at here is that there are some very fair maps that have been drawn, and many of them in other states that are unfair for both Republicans and Democrats, but Democrats are going to benefit from it the most because the GOP doesn't have their gerrymanders as they previously thought in states such as, Ohio and North Carolina that they otherwise would have had for 2022. And looking at the House ratings, it becomes very clear. If you want to take a look at 538s, I think they give you a better depiction in terms of the newer maps based off their own ratings, but we're also going to look at the Coke Political Report in just a moment. So in taking a look at our brand new map here, the older map here, what we were looking at was the Republican Party had 46 highly competitive districts. So those are ones that are not going to be attributed to either side. But we had 52 competitive Republican districts and 156 solid Republican districts, which meant at a baseline, the GOP was winning 208 House seats. That's why they were able to hold on to the majority for such a substantial period of time. Keep in mind that 208 number. Looking at the Democratic side, what did they have? They had 148 districts, and they had 33 competitive districts. So, looking at the margins here, the Republican Party obviously had the upper hand. Well, on a brand new map, the Democratic Party is getting closer to where they were previously. 132 solid Democratic districts, and what you have is 45 competitive Democratic districts. That puts them at 177. On the GOP side, however, you have 135 Republican districts, and you have a total number of 25 competitive Republican districts, which means at this point in time, the Republican Party actually is behind the Democratic Party when it comes down to the newly drawn maps. And you might say, on one hand, that sort of makes sense. But looking at the remaining states, what's going to happen? The status quo is likely to be maintained in the state of Florida. If anything, a minor increase for the GOP. Ohio probably isn't going to be drawn in a way that is completely unfair. I would say, looking at what the courts have declared there, Ohio probably isn't going to find a map that is too beneficial to the GOP compared to their previous ones, which means the Democratic Party is likely to gain seats in the state of Ohio. Wisconsin is likely to maintain the status quo. New Hampshire might be a singular seat gain for the GOP. Missouri is likely to maintain the status quo, and so is Louisiana. So if you want to come to a point, the Democratic Party is likely to get about 20 more seats remaining, and they currently have 177, where the old map they had 181. The GOP is likely to come out with the upper hand over the Democratic Party in terms of total number of districts, but again, that is yet to be seen. And because the Democrats are expected to surpass their previous numbers, this is why I really doubt the Republican Party's ability to do super well in 2022. I do think they will still win, but I don't think it'll be by a lot. And looking at the Cook Political Report, they have also rated their own rankings. They have some seats here that we can characterize. They have a total number of 6 seats in the lean column for the GOP, 10 in the likely, and 144 in the solid. That's 160. For the Democrats, however, they have a higher amount. They have 185. This map, what we have seen already, what has been released and what has been put out to the American public, is a map that is more beneficial for the Democratic Party, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to see how the GOP can do well in 2022. If they are to win control of the House, and I say if because it isn't an actuality yet, but if they are to win control of the House of Representatives in 2022, it will more than likely be on the backs of a wave of a Republican surge in support than it will be on redistricting. Democrats did not win in 2012 because of redistricting. It was not because Republicans had a wave. Barack Obama won the presidential election. He won over 300 electoral votes, 332 to Mitt Romney's 206. What you found here was Democrats maintained control of the Senate, but the House was lost. But not because the Democratic Party did not win the election. It was because the Republican Party was able to gerrymander so many states that even in states where Democrats were able to win the popular vote in the House of Representatives, it still prevented them from winning individual districts. And looking at this map, there's a very significant amount of red. So this is the map that, the Democratic Party probably was very unhappy to see. After redistricting, they tried to push back in certain states that they could, but ultimately ended up failing. They really did not have a good year. Between 2010 and 2018, the Democratic Party was simply unable to win control of the House of Representatives, even though they got substantially close in some elections. In 2016, they only lost the popular vote by about a percentage point, and yet only won 194 districts, and that was with, Donald Trump's election, which partially made sense, but only losing the House popular vote by 1, but then losing by over 30 seats is a substantial difference. Democrats are not going to be that down after 2022, especially looking at the generic ballot today. I am very confident the Democratic Party will remain above 200 seats leading into 2022. It could totally change. The Republican Party could all of a sudden skyrocket, to being up 6-7 points nationwide, in which then I would probably reevaluate. I would probably say, the GOP is in a position where they're overcoming even the strongest of barriers by gerrymandering from the Democratic Party. And not to say, of course, the GOP doesn't gerrymander. They absolutely do, but this is just a point to say that of the party that is playing defense, they are doing so very, very well. And Democrats are actually doing better than I would say, they would have under a different type of national circumstance, a different type of, Republican association with, January 6th and President Donald Trump. I think the Republican Party has really made it very difficult for themselves to come across as the centrist, bipartisan, independent representing party, and more so has come across as a partisan, extremist, right-wing type of party. While the Democrats aren't appealing to independents any more than the GOP is, I think that it is just very difficult, and there's a reason why there are so many undecided voters here who are just unwilling to commit themselves to either political party. I think the extremism has gotten to a lot of people. The polarization has as well. And while people can come together and say they disapprove of Joe Biden, it becomes a lot more difficult to ask them, can you turn that anti-Biden sentiment into a pro-Republican vote? And I think at some point, people are going to have to make a decision. I do think they will choose the GOP in most cases, but I don't think it'll be by a lot. I don't think the generic ballot victory will turn into something that is a 5 to 6 point victory or higher for the GOP as it stands of February of 2022. But by the time we reach November, crazier things, can change up this race. We could see a significant shift in support for the GOP or even the Democratic Party. But the main takeaway here is that Democrats have done so well in redistricting and the Republican Party really has not. And in addition to that, the national environment just really, while being anti-Biden, isn't so much anti-Democrat. I think that all adds into this general idea and general understanding that the Democratic Party will likely do better in many of these states than we otherwise realize. And that could truly be a game changer for 2022 and many years beyond. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen is a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.